Begin the current Daf Mesechta Gitin Daf Mem Gimel. We begin 5 lines down at the top of the Yomid, where the Gemara continues a question that was brought up in the beginning of the end of the previous Daf regarding this halacha of Eved, that's Chetzi Ben Chayrin, Chetzi Eved, which was the theme of the previous Dafim. So the question then becomes regarding his knas. We wanted to know, okay, what happens then when he's killed, when he's killed, the Eved, the 30 shkom goes to his master, and when he's a free person, there's a halacha of kaifer. So the question is, what happens when he's chatzi Eved, chatzi ben chayrin? So since the Gemara was talking about this halacha of knas, so the Gemara got into the discussion regarding, so in general, if an Eved that his master wants to sell him for the knas, could he be sold or not? That's why Gemara continues on that question that we brought up in the previous daf. Today's daf. So I'm discussing today's daf are Eved shemachar Rabbi l'knas. This question, if he sells him only for the knas, meaning if this Eved dies and then someone has to pay out 30 shkolim, could he sell it to someone else or not? Which relates to the question of Eino Demakin Davish L'Ba'ilam. A person cannot go ahead and create a kinyan on somebody that's not here yet in the world. Question is, Chetzi Eved Chetzi Ben Chayrin, Kiddush Bas Chayrin Mahu. What's the halacha if a half-free person, half-slave, gets engaged to a woman? What would the halacha be? The Gemara compares this to two possibilities, which are two different cases, which are a little bit technical, but it's the Gemara in Kedushin regarding his kachi lechatzi. If a man tells a woman, "I want you to be engaged to half of me," she's mukadesh, she's engaged. But if he tells him a kaddish chatzi isha, he says to the woman, "I'm engaging half of you," then any mukadesh, she's not going to be engaged. The question is, which one would that be compared to the halacha of chatzi ebed chatzi b'chayr? Then the next Mishnah continues regarding Hamurcha Abdul Abdikachavim. Someone sells his slave to a non-Jew, Yotz B'chayr, and he goes out free. But there's two contradicting brises regarding the halacha of love min al-Eved. If you borrow from a non-Jew, meaning regarding what's considered selling a non-Jew or selling your slave. If you borrow from a non-Jew, would that be considered that your slave is a mashkin and therefore it's like you sold him? But that seems to be contradictory from another brisa that says Eved kachavim shemashkes adei Yisrael, when a non-Jew makes his field collateral to a Jew, where a non-Jew's field is potter from Trumas and Maisers. If he makes it collateral to a Jew, it's still going to be exempt. The question is, well, what's the difference? Is mashkin like selling or is it not like selling? The Gemara is going to discuss that. And one of the important terms of the concept is shivcha charufa, which is machlekes regarding is that a regular shivcha? Is that a shivcha that's chatzi shivcha and chatzi baschar? So begin the current daf. The Gemara had asked in the previous daf this question: Eved shemachar Rabbi l'knas. If he sells them for knas, is he sold or not sold? So the Gemara had elaborated and said, the question can be asked according to either one of them. They disagree in the concept of other makdash shloim b'la'olam. So the question is, what's the question? Saying even though he holds that, generally, if you sell peiros of a dekel to your friend, you sell peiros of a tree, which are not here yet. Rameir says it's sold because other makdash davish b'la'olam. Rabbanan say no, it's not sold because you cannot sell something that's not yet here. The Gemara says, well, you could ask it either way. You could say, according to Rameir, maybe he'll hold other makan and therefore the slave will be sold. Or maybe you say that no, only payers dekel David the asu, because they're going to come. But Kanaz, who said he's going to get gored? Who said the guy's going to pay? Maybe he's going to be Moed B'Knas, he's going to be Potter, the guy who did the damages. So maybe it's not sold. And so you could ask the question called Rabbanan. You could say, okay, maybe the hold is not sold because they hold any other makan, or maybe no, only by payers dekel, where now it's not here, so therefore you cannot be maknid. But by knas, the shar is here, the Eved is here, and maybe that would be considered bala olam, and therefore maybe you would be able to sell the knas. So that's the question the Gemara asks. On that, the Gemara continues 5 lines down at the top of the Amid. Amid Abab. It says Tashma Tzbinga Raya. It's a little bit of a technical drasha, but Tashma. The Brisa quotes the pasuk in Meyikra when it talks about a person's slaves. When it comes to the halach of eating truma. So it said vilid bias. So it talks about there in the pasuk that a kohen acquires a soul of acquisition of his money, meaning his slave. So the slave could eat from his truma, and it says vilid beisai, and also if he's born in his house. So the question is, matam alema, what is this coming to teach me regarding the eating of truma that it says in the pasuk vilid beisai him yichbalachmai? Those slaves that are born in this house, they eat his bread, meaning they could eat truma too. Yilid bias refers to the son of his shivcha. His shivcha has a baby which is in his house, so that baby could eat truma. Now, I don't understand, what do you need this for? If it wasn't even born in his house, it's not to his shivcha. Rather, he buys some slave off the street. That slave could eat. Yilid bayis l'kol sheken. So if it's born into his house, isn't it all the more so? So what do I need a pussy to say that? Says the Rebbe, I'll tell you why. Ilu kain, meaning had it only written kinyi kaspahu yochel that the slave that he acquires with his money could eat. You see, I would have said, yeah. Ma kinyi kesef. What do you find by acquisition of money? Shesh b'shav kesef. Obviously, mean it has a value of money. You bought him with money. So eichel, then that slave could eat. So afi led bayis. So too the baby, the eved that's born into your shivcha. Shesh b'shav kesef eichel. Only if he's worth some money, he could eat truma. How do I know even if the baby's not worth anything that he can still eat the truma? Tamalemi yilid bayis to say, yeah, he's born in the house. Because Malcolm, is nishved gunished. You're born into the house. Fine, you could eat. Yeah, but still, I would say, okay, yilid bayis. Maybe the slave that's born in the house. Then ben sheyesh b'shav kesef, because that's what the whole point of the yilid base is come to teach you. Whether it has value, ben sheyesh b'shav kesef. Whether it doesn't have value, okay, such a slave could eat truma. But kinyan kesef, when it's acquired with money, maybe I would say, okay, yes, b'shav kesef eichel. If it has a value of money, then that slave could eat. Ein b'shav kesef ein eichel. Maybe I would say, it has to be kinyan kesef, has to be worth money. If the slave is not worth anything of piyasta, maybe then that slave cannot eat truma. Tamalayma, it puts the terminologies in the pasuk together. In the same psukim, in the same pasuk, it says kinyan kaspai, and it says vilid baisei. To make a hakish, ma yilid bay is just like the eved that's born into the house. Even though it's not worth anything, could eat truma, because that was what the word was coming to tell us. So to the one that's acquired by your money, even though it's not worth anything. For example, let's say it's smitten with boils, and this eved no one would want to buy, even if you gave him for free. Still, he could eat truma. Okay, that was a big brisa that really is not our mesechta, but says the Gemara like this, related to the question we asked. If you would think to say, that when a slave, if the master could sell him just for the halacha of knas, that if he gets killed, insurance money basically, right? Yeah, you could get the insurance money from this slave. So you tell me macher, he could be sold, so it doesn't make sense, the whole case. Is there any slave that cannot be sold for at least a pruta l'knasa, where if an ox is going to gore him, then he'll take 30 silver coins? Meaning that itself has a value, because that's the point of the sale of the knasa. So how can you tell me that yilid bayis and even kinyan kaspa is coming to and be included if it's not worth anything? There's no evidence not worth anything. How do I know? Because even if no one wants him, you'll buy him in the stock, so that if he gets killed, you'll get 30 shkalim. So how can you say there's an evidence that doesn't have a worth a pruta? Says Gemara, yeah, I'll tell you, because ikke evet treif, it's not a raya. You could have a slave that has a mortal defect. He's a ticking time bomb. We no one will want to pay any money for his knas because he's a dead person. He's going to drop dead. No one's going to wait to see, maybe he's going to get in a car accident, maybe I'll get insurance money. No, it doesn't have any value. But says, okay, fine, he's a treif, but v'chazil make him kamei, but he's fit to serve, and even though his legs get cut off above the knees, or let's say he has a perforated in his perforation in his brain, he's still able to do a light service, able to go to the store and do work as an Uber to get you something, right? So, well, how can you say it's not worth even a pruta? So no, we're talking about bimenuvel, someone that's disgusting, and he's a treifa, where he's not going to get a knas, and he's smitten with boils, where again, you don't want to see him, you don't want to hear from him, you don't want anything from him, and he doesn't even have monetary value in the knas because it's a treifa. So it's not a right. It could be, Ebed could be sold for treifa. The Gemara does not resolve the question, he could be sold for knas, but here's talking about where there would be no sale for knas because he's a treif. Now, continue on this theme of chatzi eved chatzi b'chayrin. The following question: Misha chatzi eved v'chatzi b'chayrin. Someone is a half slave, half free person. Shekidish bas chayrin. Now he gets engaged to a regular Jewish woman. What's the halacha? Now, in Mesechtes Kedushin, there's two cases that we're going to be referencing, and it's a little bit surface that we're going to be referencing them, but the halacha is if a man tells a woman, I want you to be engaged to half of me. Hiskachi lechetzi. Be engaged to half of me. So halacha is mukadesha, she's engaged. But if let's say he says, chetziech mikudeshesli, half of you is engaged to me, she's not engaged. That's the two cases. So the Gemara wants to know, here, in this case, would it be kedushin or not? And the Gemara is going to try to compare it to either one of these two cases, as the Gemara explains. If you're going to want to say, in other words, if you're going to want to answer our question from the halacha that we know Mesechtes Kedushin of Ben Yisrael, Shomer Labas Yisrael, if a Jewish man tells to a Jewish woman, Hiskachi lechetzi. I want you to be engaged to half of me. Mukadesha, she's engaged. So you'll say, great. It's exactly the case over here. I want you to be engaged to half of me. Half of me is Jewish. Half of me is not. Shouldn't that be a raya? Says the Gemara, no, it's not comparable. Because over there, that man is a totally free person. The chazye lekule, she's fit for all of them. So what was he telling her when he says, be engaged to half of me? All he was trying to say was, if I want to, I'm going to marry another woman besides you. Half of me is to you, half of me is to another woman, which he's allowed to. A man's allowed to get married to two women. So when you say get engaged to half of me, that makes sense. But here by the chatzi, she's not fit for all of them because she's not fit for the half of him that's a slave. So it's not the same thing. It sounds similar. That's just saying we're only like talking about servant. What? Could be. And the way you could hear the Gemara's having means to say that, but you're only doing to half of you, and you want to leave the other half of you open to marry another woman. The Gemara is saying, yeah, maybe like that type of svar, like, well, you're able to marry the whole thing, and here you're not able to marry the whole thing, so maybe they would be different. So then the Gemara says, okay, no right from that case, but maybe I'll tell you what's with the other way around. So if you're going to say, let's bring a raya from Ben Yisrael HaMakadosh Chatzi Isha. Halacha is, if a Jewish man engages half of the woman, where he tells Yar, Chetziech Mikadeshesli. So the halacha over there is, in the Mukadeshes, she's not engaged. Okay, so maybe you're going to want to resolve our question from that case to say, just like when someone engages half of a woman, she's not engaged. Now, why not? Why is she not engaged? Because you can't say that he's telling her the same thing when you say to half of me. Why don't you say the same thing to half of the woman, that you're leaving the other half of the woman to marry another man? Because that we know, a woman's not allowed to marry two men. So that's not going to work when you say only engage half of you. So it comes out that half is engaged, and that doesn't work. Oh, you can't engage halfway? So here also, when half of the man is going to create engagement, it's not going to be Kedushin. So maybe that'll be a raya to show that it doesn't work. So you go, no, it's not comparable. Why? Because over there, the shai bikinyane, when that regular man and that regular woman, when he engages half of the woman, he's leaving over part of his acquisition where he should have engaged all of her. He's only doing half of. Well, that doesn't work. But whatever the case of the slave, lo shar bikinyane, he didn't leave over any of his ability of acquisition because whatever he was able to do, he did. Because only half of him is free. And that's the half that will engage the woman. So maybe that will work because you're not leaving over anything. No, then the quarter won't work because you're half free person. Right. Right. A quarter of heart. Well, it's really. Yeah, I'm saying his kinyan that he's able to do is only half of him could make a kinyan. Yeah. If he did a quarter, then that wouldn't work, right? Because he would be shari kinyan. That would be the raya from that case when you mekadosh chatzi isha, that it doesn't work because you're able to make a kinyan on all of her and you're only doing half of her. That doesn't work. That's what the Gemara is entertaining, at least in one of the options. So here, when he's only half free, all of my half is going to get engaged to her, but not all of me. But that's only because I can't. But if I did a quarter, then yeah, the Gemara would say that wouldn't work because you left over from your kinyan. But maybe if you do half of you, it would work because that's all you could do. What's the halacha? So the Gemara says basically we can't prove definitively from either one of these cases. So the Gemara says Tashema, let's bring a raya from a brisa we mentioned previously. The brisa said in the previous daf, Hamas, if an ox killed Misha Chetzi Eved V'Chetzi B'Chayim, this half guy, an ox killed him. So what do we say? So Noisin Chatzi Knas LaRabbi, you give half of the Knas, which is the 30 shkalim, to his master, which is 15. V'Chatzi Kafel Yarshim, and you have what his value of the person, of the free person, you give half of that to his Yarshim. Okay. Says the Gemara, B'Yamar, if you're going to tell me that Kedusha will have Kedushin, that a Chatzi Eved Chetzi B'Chayim doesn't have Kedushin, Yarshim and Ole, where did you have Yarshim from? Yarshim is only if he's marrying a free woman. But if you tell me that it's Kedushin, not a Kedushin, we have Yarshim. Taisa discusses, it says, what are you making dependent on Kedushin? What do you mean, why couldn't he had a single woman that he had relations with who yarshins him. Let's discuss that. But the Gemara is assuming that if he doesn't have kedushin, then his son wouldn't have any yichus after him. So basically there must be kedushin. But you tell me there's no kedushin. Obviously there is kedushin. Or else how are you having yarshin? The Gemara has a very interesting answer. Amar Bar Avi says no. This ox didn't kill the guy, but he made him have a mortal defect where he's only going to have a few weeks left to live. So it's as if he killed him. Umay Yarshim, what does it mean his Yarshim get half of the kaifer? Is Nafshe himself. He's his own Yerush. He's a dead person, but he gets to live off that money from the injury, and he gives it to himself. He's a Yerush because he's getting it because he was killed, but he's not dead yet, but he's going to die. So you give the half of the kaifer to Yarshav, which is his own self, because he Yarshans himself. Right, so that's what the Gemara is going to discuss. But at this point, the Gemara is assuming that, you killed him. You're just not literally dead yet, but you got to pay him the death money for having killed him. But on that, Rabbi says, Shtei Tshuvas b'David. Rabbi doesn't like this for two reasons, he says. First of all, the Yerush Ketani. I mean, you can't really call a guy himself his own Yerush. You know what I'm saying? He's collecting for his own death. That's usually called fraud, right? That was the injury. That was if someone else injures him, then the money goes to the master. So then the second injury that the master does, for sure he should be pater. But the halach of going free of Shem Ayin is by the master. Well, it's a good, interesting point, interesting svara. But so yeah, that would only be by the master. You wonder if that's called Yarshav. Does that kaifer money go to if he gives over his estate? You call him a Yairish. I hear. He's Chatzi Bechayrin. I hear. Well, terminology usually seems to indicate that, but yeah, it's a good question. So one problem is it's not a Yairish. And if Morbi says Kaifer, wait a second, what's this money that this guy's getting for getting killed? It's a Talmud money. V'Amar says Kaifer in Mishlam Elachamisa was really the question you asked before. Kaifer money, you only get paid out when the guy literally dies, because like Rashi explains, I could understand the other half of Chatzi Knas. By Knas, of the Chatzi Eved, there it doesn't say in the Torah the word Misa. It just says the word Negicha about getting gored. It says, Eved Yigach Hashar B'Goimer. So you think you could explain that, okay, great, he was made into a treifa. But by kaifer of a free person, it says v'heinus isha. You can't tell me that the half which is the kaifer money he's getting, paid out because he's dying in a few weeks, so he's going to get the kaifer. It's only when he actually dies. So he says for those two reasons, that's not a good option to interpret. So Elam Rabbi gives a different interpretation. He says, it's not going to be a raya that his kedushin are a kedushin, but if that's the case, v'yizdu yarshin. Says no, ro little. What the Brisa means to say is that the half that's not knas, the half that's kaifer money from the half of him that's free, it would be appropriate for his Yarshim to take, but he doesn't have, because he's dead. And the Yarshim he doesn't have Yarshim to collect. So therefore, all it means to say is the one who damaged him will keep the money that they have, but we're talking about where he died. In other words, the Bryce is saying, you give half of the knas to his master, and the half of the kaifer would be appropriate to give to his Yarshim if he had Yarshim. But it doesn't have Yarshim because his Kedushin is not a Kedushin. So it doesn't mean that there is a kaifer, it's just saying it would have been appropriate and then the guy gets to hold on to it. So the Gemara does not answer this question of Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Bechayrin, that Kiddush is Baschar Mahu. Now the Gemara mentions a similar type of discussion, but regarding a reverse situation. Amar Rava. Just like as when a man engages half of a woman, he says like half of you is engaged to me. We already mentioned Ein Mekadesh not engaged. So Kach, he wants to say the same thing as Chetzi Shivcha Chatz B'Scharin. You have this half slave woman, half free woman. Shindiskacha that gets engaged. In Kedusha Kedushin. Why not? It says the same thing. When you want to get engaged to a woman, all of her has to be acquired to you. You're acquiring only half of her. It doesn't work because, what do you mean? You can't leave over the other half of her to get married to someone else. She can't marry two people. So you can't leave both. You have to get engaged to the whole woman. Okay, if she's half slave woman, half free woman, you only get engaged to half of her. That's not going to work. However, the Gemara first says, similarly, Dorish Rabba Bar Huna. He says, yeah, Shem Shemikadosh Chatzi Isha in Makedesh, just like someone engages half a woman is not engaged. When you get engaged to half slave woman, half free woman, you're not going to get engaged. So it's the same like Rabba. But Amalei Rav Chizda says to him, what? Me dummy? Is it comparable? Hasam Shai B'Kinyan, the same svar we said before. By the regular free woman, if you only engage half of her, you're leaving over in your kinyan in the woman. That won't work because it has to fill up the whole space. He didn't leave over in the kinyan. There's only half of her that's free. So who said that wouldn't work? So Rabbi Huna actually appointed a translator in front of him to get up and to give a drasha. The drasha in the darshan says, Rabbi Sai, quotes a pasuk in Yeshaya. And this stumbling is beneath your hand. What does that mean? So Rashi explains, he started his drasha. The pasuk says, and this stumbling block is beneath your hands. The people of Yerushalayim, they didn't know how to learn anymore. And they asked their friends, Simla lacha, you have the garment, cuts into your and you should be the leader for us. Because what does that mean? In other words, things that are hidden like a cloak, which the words of Torah are hidden, are yours, because you're proficient, you tell us, you teach us Torah. And you be the cuts and you be the leader, because hamachshel hazais, what's hamachshel hazais? The words of Torah, that what? Ein adam oimin al divrei Torah, a person does not stand on the words of Torah to understand them, to be right about them. Unless he stumbles on them. A person does not know the truth until he stumbles in his ruling mistakenly, and he gets embarrassed for it. Which I once sent a letter to someone, and he admitted to what I said, and he says, yeah, you're right. And the guy understands, and he realizes that Taka, I made a mistake, and you can understand it. That's Tachas Yodecha, you have it. Basically, what he's trying to say in this drasha was, I made a mistake in my ruling, I retract, so it shouldn't be embarrassed as a ruv. You make a wrong psak and whatever, you get up, say, you only that. So it's not the same. It's different. Even though they said if someone gets engaged to have a woman, she's not engaged. When she gets engaged, kedushin, it is going to be valid kedushin. My time, what's the reason? Isn't it the same thing? It's half a woman? No. By the regular free woman, you're leaving over in the kinyan. Not leaving over the kinyan, and the kinyan is going to work. However, Amar Rav Sheshes actually disagrees, and he says not true. He says kishem shama kadosh chatzi isha ein mukadesh. It's just like when you engage half a woman, she's not engaged. Kach hatshevach v'chatz b'chayim is gacha ein kedusha kedushin. It's not going to be valid kedushin. And he goes on to explain, and he says that vim lechashcha adam loimer. Now, if a person is going to whisper to you, to respond to you, and say, "Wait a second, what are you going to do with the halacha mesechtes krisis Daf Yod Alef and Alef?" The Mishnah there says, "Ezehi shivcha charufa." What's considered a shivcha charufa, which is a special halacha brought in the Torah? Meaning, it says in the Torah, "Vehefte loinif dasa," which that's a shivcha charufa. What is that? So it says redeemed. She's not redeemed. So it's like she's halfway redeemed. Oh, so she's half shivcha, half free person. Hamorasa la'eved ivri, that's engaged to an eved ivri, which Rashi points out, it's not only to a Jewish slave, it's any Jew. It's just we're picking what's normal because an eved ivri is permitted in a shivcha, but really, it's whoever should be, any Jewish man should be engaged to. Ooh, says Rav Chizda, Alma, so you see, basis rusehi, that from the fact that the words are mu'chasas, that she's engaged to an eved ivri, obviously she can get engaged. So wait a second. How could I say that a kedushin is not kedushin? And that says Rav Chizda, says Rav Sheshes, Amaloi, tell him, you think that they're literally, it's engagement, it's erison? Then go to Rabbi Shmuel, meaning, he explains that actually the shivcha charufa, the Torah was just talking the way people normally speak. It's not a chati shivcha chatz b'scharin. It's a regular shivcha kananis that wasn't redeemed at all. I says beheftelin neftasa. As over that mean, redeemed, not redeemed. You know what I'm saying? Meaning like it's like a terminology. It's how people speak, but it doesn't mean that it's redeemed and not redeemed at the same time. That's the case. Hamoras le'aver that's engaged to an aver. Now, b'shivcha kananis, you think a non-Jewish maidservant, you think she has engagement, but she's a chamayra. It's a amatem el chamayra. She's a eisel. She's like in halacha they treat it in the same as a non-human. So obviously, what do you have to say according to Bishmol? My mughas is, what would you say that she's engaged? It must be miyucheda. She's designated in successor custody. That for such a case, you'll be chayv and asham if you have relations with that shivcha, because since she was designated for the every who's permitted in her. Okay, so hachanam here also the Tanakama. My mughas says miyucheda should mean designated. It wouldn't be a riot to say, oh, you see, it's kedushin. Not true. There's no kedushin. I say mughas. That just means designated, because according to Bishmol, you have to say that. Now, related, the Gemara brings Amar of Chizda. This woman who's half maidservant, half free woman, they got engaged to Reuben. Then, she was emancipated, meaning this half slave woman was engaged to Reuben and she got freed. And then she was engaged to Shimon, his brother. As Rashi explains, Reuben is still alive. Reuben didn't divorce her. Reuben was married to this Chatz, and then his brother Shimon, after she was freed, got engaged to her. And both of them died. Says of Chizda, Levi. She could have Yibum with the third brother, Levi. What's the chiddush in that? So as we continue to Beis, I'm not going to say regarding this the halacha of what's called Ishes Shnei Mesim, the wife of two dead people. Meaning to say she was half to Reuven and half to Shimon, and that she's coming for Yibum from both of them because she was engaged to both of them. Which the Gemara in Yevamos Base tells us if you have three brothers that are married to three unrelated women, one of the brothers dies, and the other brother, we call him Shimon, does a mimer, which is a rabbinic kedushin in a Yevama, and then he dies. So the Gemara there tells us that Levi, the third brother, could only do chalitza, not do Yibum. Why? Because it says in the Torah, and one of them dies, which tells us only a woman that comes from the zika, the bond of one yavam, not if she has a zika of two yavam. And this woman, through the mimer, so the mimer doesn't totally remove her from the zika of the first yavam, from her first husband, but at the same time, a little bit now, it does take effect the zika of the second yavam, because a mimer is somewhat a relationship. So that excludes that case that you can't do yibum. So that's the chiddush of Chizda. But over here, you don't have a zika of both Reuben and Shimon, because one of them is a kedushin gemura, and the other one is nothing. Now, however, like Rashi explains, and Tosfos disagrees, whatever, but because it's a machlekes of the Amayram previously, we're not sure, because of the halacha chatei shivcha of chatz baschayrin, which one is the kedushin. But now that they both died, for sure you could do yibum to Levi manavshach. Either way you look at it. Why? Kedushin, the Reuben kedushin. If you hold like Rav Chizda, that when you do a kedushin with chasei shivcha chatz baschayrin, it's going to be a kedushin because you didn't leave over anything in your kinyan. You did a total kinyan with whatever you have on this woman. Okay, kedushin love kedushin. So now when his brother Shimon does a kedushin, what's the kedushin? You can't make a kedushin in your brother's wife. Reuben's still alive. The kedushin in the chatei shivcha chatz, now that she's freed, doesn't make a difference. I was already engaged to her beforehand. So it's a regular yibum of yavam echad. And the kedushin of Shimon kedushin. And if you say the kedushin of Shimon is kedushin, meaning the second brother, that must mean kedushin to Reuben love kedushin. Which Tosfos says, wait a second, this is Rav Chizda. I thought Rav Chizda himself said that it is a kedushin. So if kedushin Shimon is kedushin, then kedushin Reuben is not kedushin. Says Tosfos, no, what Rav Chizda wasn't sure about was, as we're going to quote right now, the next Gemara, what happens when she gets freed? When she gets freed, does that conclusively cement the relationship, or does it actually be mafkia and uproot the relationship? So he wasn't sure, but he says, either way, when both these brothers die, you for sure could do yibum with the third brother. Because either the first one's marriage was a marriage, which he said it is, but maybe when she gets freed, maybe that changes. But then the second one is a kedushin, and the first one not. So either way you look at it, he says you could do yibum with Levi, and it's not a problem of Esher Shnei Mesa. Now Idma we learned, which just takes us on to this journey of the next case. This half slave woman, half free woman. Okay, she was engaged to Reuben, and she was freed. And then when she got engaged to Shimon, that Rashi importantly tells us nothing to do with brothers. That's not the main point that we're saying over here. It's not because Shimon is the brother. It's just to another man. Rav Yosef bar Chama Amar Rav Nachman, he says, the first one's kedushin has been removed, as Rashi explains. Even if you hold the record of Chizda, and this is what Taisa was referring from the previous Gemara, of Chizda wasn't sure. Even according to Rav Chizda, it says that yes, you can get engaged to a chatz shivich v'chatz bas chayrim. The shiur, when she gets freed, removes that. Therefore, she's engaged to Shimon, to the second one, because now she's a new person. She's like a cotton shanoila dummy. When you get freed, you become like a gerus. So therefore, you're like a regular Jew now, which you weren't beforehand. So now she's engaged to Shimon. Rabbi Nachman says, no, to the contrary. Gamru kedushay rishen. Through the shiur, it was now concluding the kedushin that you had with Reuven. Meaning, up until now, this chatzi, if someone would be mezana with her, he would only get a karban asham and malchus, even if he did b'mezid, which is unique halach of shecha charufa, which is chatzi. Now on, this woman who was engaged to this Reuven, if you would be mezana with her, there'd be misa, because it's actually goymer the kedushin that she had with him. So it's a machlekes regarding what happens when she gets freed. Does it solidify the previous and concretize the previous engagement, or actually uproot it because of now of her being emancipated? So Rabbi Zeri says, he says it's logical, like my opinion, that the kedush when she gets freed, it's actually goimer, meaning it concludes, it solidifies the original kedushin, not be mafkiyah. Why? Interesting raya that he says. The pasuk says in Yikram, when it talks about the shivcha charufa, which again is this chatzi woman who's engaged to a Jewish man, an Ebed Ivri, it says, okay, whoever's mezan with her, lo yumsu, they're not going to die. Why? Kiloi chufasha, because she wasn't freed. Which, again, we explained that this is a woman that's half slave woman, half free woman. And the Gemara understands that what's the pasuk saying? That, they're not going to be chayiv misa of eshes ish, because lo chufasha, because she wasn't freed after the kedushin that she had with this Ebed Ivri. But it sounds like her chufasha. But if she would subsequently be freed afterwards, that it would sound like you must have, then they would die. Why would they die? To the contrary, the kedushin should be like she's a single woman now. Must be because it actually is goimer and makes her into a full-fledged eshes ish. Says Reb Zeir, you see, like me, you see that when she gets freed, it actually doubles down on the previous marriage and makes her into full-fledged eshes ish. Which Amar Abaye says not a raya, because Ulatana de Bere Bishmal, as we brought him in before on the Aleph, according to the Tana of the Yeshiva Bishmal, he explains this pasuk of Shivcha Charufa. It's not half woman. She's a B'Shivcha Kanan, it's a regular non-Jewish maidservant. Amores Labiri that's engaged to an Ebed Ivri. That's the woman that if you're mezana with her, since she doesn't have an Ebed Ivri, you get an Asham and Malchus. Achanami, you think over there also the Chichuvsha that after engagement, if she gets freed, Yumsu, if you were mezana with her, you would die. What do you mean? The Kedushin Rishayim were nothing. It's a Shivcha Kanan. She's a Chamoira. Elamayis L'chamen. What do you have to say? So what's the diuk? What's the inference of the pasuk trying to say? It's just trying to say if shechuvsha b'chazav in this gacha, that's what you would have to take according to Bishmol. If she would be freed and then get engaged, then they would die if they're mazana with someone else. Okay, chanam here also shechuvsha b'chazav in this gacha. She's freed and then got engaged. So there's no right to your b'zeir. Not showing that when you get freed, that then it doubles down and into the first kedushin that is going to make a full-fledged married woman. No, it's just saying if she gets freed and then she's mekadesh with someone, whoever it is, then you can be chayiv. But now that lo yichuvasha, that's not going to be chayiv, means it's not a riot to Reb Zeir. Now, continuing on this theme of our Mishnah regarding a half slave woman. So I'm reading about Gitin Daf Yitzchak. It says, "Ma'isa be'isha achas." There was a story with one woman that was shechetz shivach v'chaz b'chayim. She was a half slave woman, half free woman. But kafu ez rabba basa baschayim. They forced her master to make her into a free woman. Says the Gemara, come on, who's that like? Could Rabbi Yechim remember Reika? Dame says in Masechet Zivam is Al Shneim Ho'emer. He says that on both man and woman was said the pasuk in Bereshit Vayivarech Oisam Elikim. God blessed them. But he said V'gomer etc. Peru Urevu. Be fruitful, multiply, umilu v'gomer, fill up the earth, which that's in the plural. It's going on in both men and women. That women are also obligated mitzvah per. Now, as half, as we had spoken about in our Mishnah, this is really what we said in our Mishnah. We said that a slave that's half, we said we forced the master, and Basil even subsequently agreed to redeem, to let him go free because what's got that in? Can't get married. Can't marry the shiflik because of the half of him that's free. Can't marry the baschem because the half of him that's a slave. So okay, so they let him go free. Hirosa, isn't that like, so why did they free this half slave woman? Obviously because she also has the mitzvah per and she can't get married to anyone because she's half. So it seems like Rabbi Yechim ben Bereika holds that a woman has the mitzvah per. He said, no. Because it's simply because minig hefker nagaba. It's because they were treating her in a ownerless type of a way with being mezana with her, because she wasn't designated to any man. She had no boyfriend, because the Yidden stayed away from her, because half that's a shivcha. The Goyim stayed away from her because half of her that's free, and she had no one to protect her, so therefore that's why they freed her, so that she could have a Jewish man to protect her from znos. Now we continue to look at the next Mishnah, continuing on the theme of having a slave go free. So we spoke about when he's half, you have to free the other half of him. So now going free is for a different reason. Someone sells his slave to non-Jews, or to chutz la'aretz, he goes out as a free man. Meaning, if let's say he runs away from his non-Jewish owner, or the courts penalized the Jewish owner, to redeem him. As the Gemara says later on, they penalize him to redeem him, and when he redeems him, he's not allowed to enslave him, which just is a rabbinic penalty, because when you sell him to a non-Jew, so you're removing him from his ability to perform mitzvahs, because as shown by the goyim are not going to say your Shabbos, it's chulent, they're not going to let him do the mitzvahs. And also, when you sell him to chutz la'aretz, he also goes free, because what happens is you took him out from Eretz Yisrael to chutz la'aretz, and you're not allowed to go out from Eretz Yisrael to chutz la'aretz. Now the Gemara is going to explain who did they penalize when you sell him to chutz la'aretz. Who gets the loss, right? Meaning he gets to go free. So is the moichid or the lekech? The guy the lekech paid the money already. So you're penalizing who? The seller? The seller got his money already. The question is, who do we penalize when you sell him to chutz la'aretz? I told him, I learned the brayso. Someone sells a slave to non-Jews, so he goes out free, and but he needs a document of emancipation from his first master. Amr Shem Lili says, when we say this, that he needs to get shiur, only if he did not write on him his document. But if he wrote on him his documentation, that's already considered his emancipation. So what's his document that if he wrote already, that he doesn't have to write a special get shiur? Rav Sheshes he wrote like this on the sale document, or whatever document he wrote, when he runs away from the non-Jew, I have nothing to do with you anymore. So when he runs away, that's what they're saying. He doesn't need to get shiur, when, even though that here you're telling me when he's selling him to the non-Jew, hasnish kan recht, so it's not considered like you're freeing him. You still have obligations. You have still kinyoni isur in this eved, because we don't sanction this sale. So you require get shiur, but that says the Gemara. But if you already wrote that if you run away, so that essentially is the equivalent of what a get shiur would be, and if you don't have to write a special get shiur. Why would he write it? Because he's trying to say that I'm done with you. So basically, it is like a form of a get shiur. I mean, why would anyone write a get shiur? Because he's like, I'm done with you. So here he's selling. He's getting good money for him. But he's saying, don't worry. If you run away, I have nothing to do with you. Why exactly would he write that? Yeah, but upon him, it's a way of like releasing him through the shtar. Which takes discuss exactly regarding why is this different than hamavka avda. I mean, says it's different. Because he says there's still kinyanim over here, so you have to write a get shiur over here. But saying this is like a way of saying I'm done with you. So we'll learn the brisa. Now here's it gets a little bit complex about what's considered a sale. So we said in the Mishnah, if you sell him to a non-Jew, okay, you violated halacha of selling him to a non-Jew because you're mafkiing him from being able to perform mitzvahs. So that's it. We penalize you. He's going to go free. But again, you have to write a shtar shiur because he's not totally free. Now, lova or love. Let's say you borrowed on collateral on the slave. Meaning the guy wants to take out a loan. He says, "What's mitzvahs that you're gonna?" He says, "Yeah." Tells the guy, "My slave is worth $250,000. A very valuable guy, a painter." He says, "I'm borrowing on him." From a non-Jew. So once the non-Jew does his custom with the slave, which we must explain shortly what is that, so yes, it already goes free because it's like a sale because he already did stuff with this eved, and therefore the knas rabbanan takes effect. So what is this custom that you're telling me that he does that is like it's already his, so it's like already sold? I'm not putting it right here. It's nashki. What's nashki? Nashki is like a emblem, like a seal that you make like a sign of a guy as a slave that you hang it on their neck. Once he puts this on this eved, even though it's still the Jews, that's already like you sold it to the non-Jew, and we already penalize him. However, in this interpretation, Rav Shesha asks in the following brisa. Yeah, he goes free. He just has to write a shtar shiur. Yeah, that's what the Gemara is going to ask. But it sounds like as if it's already by the guy already. Shine geliked of the eved, zana, chesumas. No, the guy got paid up. The guy got paid up with this eved, but you can't take this guy as a slave anymore. You lost. What's the whole halacha b'chlal? It's really going to be, but you have no. So the point, right? Exactly. So you have to redeem him, right? So we'll see that right in the Gemara, but he has to redeem him because that's the knas. Because what's the knas? I already got my money's worth of the eved. I'm saying so. That's a Rashi had mentioned. We'll see in the Gemara that they force him to redeem him, and then he can't even enslave him, so he loses him that way. So the problem is it's a technicality, but the Bryce is harisin sharecroppers, meaning what the Bryce is talking about is a Jew that becomes a sharecropper for a non-Jew in the non-Jew's property. Now this Tana holds that a non-Jew has a kinyan in Eretz Yisrael to remove it from its kedusha sa'aretz from being chayv and ma'aser. So when you have a sharecropper who he works, he gets either half the profits, a third of the profits, or a quarter of the profits, whatever it is, or vachakiris, where a guy he basically he has a contractual understanding with the non-Jewish owner that he's going to get a certain amount of wheat per year. It's like a rental. He pays him a certain amount of wheat per year. He's going to work the land. Or varise but the avis, which arisa but the avis is that there's been a long-standing sharecropping in this Jewish family for many generations with the zaydas of the goyim that own these fields. Even so, that's a chiddush that it's not considered like as if the Jew owns the property; it's the non-Jewish property, and therefore, again, the produce is going to be potter from meiser from this portion that the Jew is going to take. So, or let's say another case. Let's have a non-Jew shemishkin today Yisrael. What he does is that he owes the Jew money. He says, Mr. Jew, here, this field will be collateral for you. Okay. In all these cases, the field is basically owned by the non-Jew. These are just, technical cases about so what the Jew has something here in this field, but it's owned by the non-Jew. So on that says the Brisa, although the Jew goes and does nimusai his custom in this collateral, it's still going to be exempt from Maisa. It's still considered the non-Jew's field to be a part of from Maisa. Says the Gemara of Isak that everything to say that what is nimusai? It means nashki. It means a seal. Sadabas nashki. What a field that has a seal? Meaning by the eved, I can understand it's like a seal, some type of an emblem that he puts on around his neck. So then you say, the non-Jew once he does nimusai, it's like his already. But what does a field have to do with a seal? There's no such chaysim that you'll put on like a sign of avdus. So Elam Rav Shesha says, no, you're right. Nimusai means zman, meaning if there's a date, that's nimusai. Meaning, if I don't pay you up by that date, it's going to be definitively yours. So that's what the Bryce was saying, that regarding the Eved, if there's nimusai, if they give it to the non-Jew says, This Eved is my collateral. Okay, you don't pay by July 1st, he's mine. The moment you make Nimusai, it's automatically considered as if it's the non-Jews, and therefore that's when the Knas takes effect. So the Gemara says, wait a second, if it's Zman, Kasha Zman Azman, they have a difficulty with this halacha of Nimusa itself, of the date. By the Eved, you're telling me that it's considered as if it's sold already to the non-Jew once there's a date in place, that at that point it's going to be his definitively. So therefore you say you already penalize him. But by a field, you tell me the other way around with the Jew. When the non-Jew owes money, he says, okay, Mr. Jew, this field is collateral for you, and we make a date. By July 1st, if this is not paid up, this will be your field. You don't say it's considered sold, and that's why you say the Jew is exempt from Meiser. So is this man considered like it's already sold or not? So the Gemara not difficult. Why not? Because the halacha by the slave is the mata zimhe. It's already the time. The time July 1st already came. So therefore the knas goes into effect of the Eved. By the field, the lemot is zimhe. It's not the time yet. It's not July 1st. So the produce that the Jews getting from the field will be apart from I still consider the non-Jews. The Gemara says, Ella, if that's the case, in the case of the slave, the mata zimhe, you tell me you already reached the time, have to say is going to go free. Of course, it's already the non-Jews. That's you violated that halacha. So Ella rather says a different shot. No, both of them are talking about where the time has not yet come. But B'lei Kasha still not difficult. Why? By the case of the slave, when he set a time for him, it's legufa. What's the halacha? If he's not going to pay up the non-Jew by that day, by July 1st, the whole body of the slave is going to be acquired by the non-Jew. That means from now, even beforehand, he's indebted to him. And since he was degrading in the Takanta de Rabbana that you're not allowed to sell a slave to a non-Jew, they penalized him even though it's not yet the time. But by the field with the Jew, that the non-Jew owes him the money where he set for him a date, that's lepeira. Meaning, now he's not eating peiros, and that he's saying that, oh look, if I don't pay it by that date, you'll be able to eat the peiros until I pay up the money. Oh, so therefore, even when it comes to the date, it's not a mechira. And for sure when it's not yet the time, so therefore that's why the Jew is going to be exempt from the halachas of Maisa, because it's the non-Jew's field. He's not getting the field. That day, July 1st, you'll get the peiros. So therefore, that's why it's not a difficulty, because they're different cases. It's more severe of the guf, of the eved, than the peiros of the sada. That's one approach. Or by same as we Gitin Daf, you could say another pshat. B'shalova amanas lamashkanai. There was a loan on condition of collateral, but he didn't take it as collateral. So what does this mean? So Rashi explains. The case of the field is, for example, where the non-Jew borrowed money from a Jew on the condition that if I don't pay up by that date, you could come and you could take my field as collateral and it'll be yours. Now, this that we're saying that the Jew is going to be potter from ice on that field is meaning as long as the Jew doesn't come along and take collateral. So although it's already, the time is up, it's already July 1st, it's still in the possession of the non-Jew. If the Jew would take his portion of the payers, it's going to be potter from ice because he never took it as a mashkin. By an Eved is the same type of case, the rabbis would penalize the Jew. Even if the non-Jew doesn't take him as collateral, still, in this Eved, they're going to penalize him because Lamaisa, the date is up, and he didn't pay him, and he's giving him the opportunity to take it. That's already enough of a zilzal in the Takans Chachamim to consider this quote-unquote as a mechira to go ahead and therefore penalize the Jew, and therefore that's why they were going to consider it as mechira, in contrast to the case of Eved, that this man is not going to be considered as mechira, and therefore it's not going to be the Jews, and therefore it's going to be part of a Maisa. Thank you to any time.